Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Net podcast. I'm your host Brian. Today I welcome a special guest. We got Goatscorge, aka Eternal Servant. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you? It's good to be here.
No worries. And how you been recently? What's new?
Recently, just been working on more music, new album. Been recording some Vox today, first track. Sent it over to my bandmate Garrett. That's what I've been doing lately.
That's good to know. And I guess where in the world are you hailing from, actually?
I'm actually down in southeast U.S. in Alabama. It's quite rural down here, obviously. Honestly, it's really weird doing what I do, living in such an area, if you can probably imagine. But yeah.
At least your neighbors don't have to hate you too much, so that's a good thing.
We'll see about that.
Eventually, but that's all good to hear. So, good to see you are doing well there, mate. And actually, I think this might be the first time. I don't know if I have to get back in some of my interviews, but I guess here's wearing a mask here. So this is actually maybe a first right here. So that's pretty cool. And I guess, how did you come up with that mask? Did someone design it for you? Did you make that yourself?
It's actually an old Halloween mask that I used during my teenage years. I just decided to repurpose it and use it for stage use.
Good choice there, mate. All right. So I guess for just to fill in the audience right here, I guess unfortunately our good friend right here has been receiving death threats and stuff like that here too. So that's why he's keeping himself anonymous and as well as his name too. So throughout this interview, we're just going to address him as Servant. So sound fair?
It's good to me.
All right, sounds good. So Servant, I want to welcome you to my podcast right here. And the way it's going to work is I send over you some questions right there. So hopefully you had some time to review. So let's get to know you more, both as a musician, and I guess in terms of details of the individual as well, or whatever you want to declassify to us. So sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So here, let's start at the beginning right here. I guess, who are you? And how did you become a musician?
Well, I became a musician. Really, it was my uncle who started it. I think I've said this a lot to my fan base, but get it out there for the larger audience. My uncle, years ago, actually not that many years ago, about 5-6 years ago, during I was 19, and sorry, this is just hard for me to talk about. So essentially what happened was his body was found. He was murdered. He was, that's why I'm kind of struggling with my words here. He was a good influence. He's the one who got me into metal music. He's the one who got me into guitar. He's the one who inspired me to start learning guitar myself. I taught myself after he taught me a few things. And it was that following year that I created my first song, dedicating it to him, talking about hypocrisy and people thinking that the underdogs aren't worthy of attention or respect. And so I was just like, I'm just going to do my thing and I'm going to honor his name in the process. So that's the gist of that.
I'm sorry to hear that there, mate. And I guess you've been doing okay recently? I guess that's pretty tough right there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was hard to talk about. Mind going in multiple directions with that question there, but yeah, overall lately I have been doing pretty well. Even despite everything, I've been recording Vox today, been recording the first song on a new Goatscorge album's coming out, so it's been good too as well. And of course we got Lord of Army stuff coming out as well from my other band, which is turning out really nice.
That's good to hear. And it's good to see you're doing well there, mate. And may your uncle rest in peace there too. And thank you so much to your uncle as well for giving us a killer musician right here too. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into music a little bit here too. So I guess start with Goatscorge. I guess how'd that come about? Because I think there's a little bit of an extensive history with it.
There is, and I'm going to reveal something about that project, or rather that band, that I've never revealed to anyone before. In the beginning, a lot of people think, just anger at the world and all this stuff. Like, on one hand, that's true. But on another hand, they don't see the other dual aspect of that, which is a lot of my mental trauma and disorders. It was not that long ago that I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, and that resulted in a lot of that, along with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. But I know that's pretty dark, but essentially it was a method, a medium for me to get all that out while also creating something that other people may enjoy, even if it may have started out as a little fun project.
Well, I mean, that's how it goes. It always starts out pretty fun, then you start taking it a little bit more serious there too. So I guess, how many bands have you been a part of? Because is Eternal Servant one of them?
Eternal Servant is just my stage name. It actually used to be Nocturnal Servant, but I thought Eternal Servant resonated a bit more. As far as my other bands, too many to name, but some of the bigger ones is Proven Existence, What Brings Ruin, Shikana, of course, Goatscorge, Ritual Golgotha, etc. Some of these have had releases on record labels and such. So yeah, that's the major ones that come off the top of my head that fans usually listen to the most.
Yeah, I was checking out some of it last night, though. I had to apologize because I was looking on Spotify and I was trying to type in Goatscorge, and unfortunately, I kept getting Goat Whore, which is Louisiana black metal band. So, unfortunately, wrong direction. So,
Oh, it's all right.
fortunately, I was able to find you on Bandcamp. I checked out some of your music there too. So, sounding killer to me. So,
Appreciate it.
always. So, I know you talked about influences earlier. So, outside of your uncle, may you rest in peace. I guess who else really inspired you? I guess, and I guess what role do you play in the band? Are you do all the instruments, or what do you do?
As far as influences go, I listen to a lot of Archgoat, Belfoot, Gore, and let's see who else. Black Witchery, Lucifer Impelled, which actually me and Lucifer Impelled, or otherwise known as Goat Desecrator, did intend to make a split back in the day, but we wound up not doing that. However, we did, as iron sharpens iron, kind of strengthen each other's resolve. We received a lot of death threats during that time, not just from people who don't agree with our beliefs, but also from people within our own belief circles who would give us death threats because they didn't understand our purpose. So we really stuck together during that time, and you could say we kind of helped bring the war metal micro genre or subgenre into that sphere. It was not easy. It really wasn't. But other than that, that's most of the influences. Lately, I've also been listening to some Dimmu Borgir as well as a non-black metal band, Gojira, from Mars to Sirius. I've actually asked Garrett to put some influence of that in the new album, but without straying too far off from the original sound.
That's some good choices right there. Though I've never listened to Belphegor. I've always heard about them too. I guess. How are the music? Is it pretty heavy?
It's pretty heavy. It's if you could imagine Behemoth, but darker. It's about like that. It's the only way I know how to describe it.
I think you'd be right. Yeah, I can believe that too. And I've listened to Behemoth too, so I know what you're talking about. So that's all cool. And I was kind of surprised about the death threats because I can understand, I guess, if you want to say the extreme atheist sort of kind, or I forget which. It was a black metal community that was, I think, pretty intense. I thought they were more based out of Europe in that Scandinavia, Poland region. I was surprised it came out of your own inner circle right there too, because I would have thought. Because I think two of your songs, I think they were just instrumentals. I wasn't too sure. It was like the Apostle Paul speaks. So it's almost like, what gives? I mean, what's with all the threats and violence and stuff?
Well, just to reiterate what kind of threats I actually do receive, and it's usually a pretty common occurrence whenever I announce a Goatscorge release specifically. One specific threat I received from a supposed Christian was that I should burn at the stake and bow at the knees of or bow on my knees to Jesus. End quote. And of course, I've also received death threats from Satanists and militant atheist. I have nothing against people with different beliefs. That's totally fine. But if you are trying to be inclusive and all of this, which I try to be as well, then death threats is not how you win people to your team.
Absolutely not. I can understand why. And I think, were you big into mortification way back in the day?
Yeah, I actually used to own their CD, Scrolls of the Megaloth. That was always my favorite album by them. And then I came to like their debut, just a little more, their self-titled. Speaking of mortification, I right after Ancestor, which got me into black metal first, was Horde. Obviously, everyone knows them. Big influence there, always a big influence there. I think every band in this scene appreciates Horde for what they do.
I was trying to remember my name because that was Jason Sherlock, who, to fill in the audience, it was actually the drummer from Mortification, and he left and formed Horde. And I know he kind of went through. I don't know about death threats from like other Christians, for example, but I know definitely from the black metal community as well. So that's what it kind of reminded me of there too. And it's a shame, really. It's almost like people just listen to the music and then just either walk away if you don't like it, or love it or hate it. It's just that simple, really.
Yeah, it really is. That's what I try to relay to people. But one thing I realized is the only thing that's going to change the world is being purely benevolent. Not hating them back or threatening them back or arguing with them is not going to change their minds. You have to prove that you are worthy of their respect by your actions.
I wish everybody else could think of that along those lines too. So, but keep it going there, mate. We love what you're doing there. So, but I guess in terms of the genre too, I guess why black metal? I guess was it just something that kind of resonated with you? I guess did you try to experiment with other genres too?
It was something that resonated with me. Originally, I was actually a metalcore kid before I was a black metalist. I originally wanted to make something more along the lines of metalcore, deathcore hybrid a long time ago. But I thought I wasn't going to be, at the time, I didn't think I was good enough to make music until that happened with my uncle. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go with it. And it wound up being black metal. It's a combination of both it resonating with me, but also the circumstances at the time. I'm not a wealthy person, so professional mixing at the time was off the table. Now, of course, we have that, but or are going to have that. But at the it just all played out. Let's just put it that way.
I'll say almost like a domino effect whenever you think about it. So
it really is.
That's good. And I guess when did you start this whole project? Was this during COVID?
Goatscorge?
Yes.
Let's see. That was back. I believe that was back early 2020. I think it was right before COVID hit.
And I guess let's go ahead and jump into the hard topic of COVID here too. So I guess you're getting ready to start this project, and then COVID hits, and it seems to shut everything down there too. So I guess how bad did COVID impact you, family, and music-wise?
Well, it definitely heavily affected me trying to find a in-person job, because up until recently, my only income was from my music. And of course, that's not enough to cover much, especially being an underground musician, which is fine. I trust my needs to be met. That being said, yes, it was difficult because when you send out about 100 applications in a single day and only 2 of them respond, and then you're still not invited for an interview, it's a little disheartening.
Yeah, I can imagine there too. Because is this mainly a full-time job doing the music-wise, or do you work multiple jobs?
Well, over the past year and a half, I've worked at 2 different jobs, but on top of being abused by managers and having my money stolen by my most recent job, it's a little difficult to find a well-paying and also well-trusted job where I am. Here in Alabama, we don't really have as many worker rights as some of the other states. I'm not saying that it's perfect everywhere else either, but what I'm saying is it's very easy to get treated underhandedly as a worker in this state, which is very unfortunate. So to answer your question, I would say my music has always been full-time while also trying to find a main way of consistent income outside of that.
Man, that's really rough. I'm sorry to hear that there too. So hopefully stability is around the corner too, but these days it's one of those things you don't want to cross your fingers or do anything like that. So I mean,
yeah, I get you.
But hopefully better days are ahead there too. But going back to COVID real quick, I guess. Did you have any brushes with it? Were you okay?
I actually caught COVID twice during the pandemic. The first time I was bedridden and almost passed out. It was bad. Along with, and you know, the worst part of it is not my immediate family, but some of my extended family were COVID deniers. It just comes with the territory in this state. I don't mean to offend anyone else in this state from this state like me, but they will know what I mean. People who from here who are like me understand. They were COVID deniers, and this led to me actually, or my whole family, getting infected with COVID. And thankfully survived, but I couldn't move for 3 days. I was bedridden. The second time wasn't as bad, but it's still pretty bad. There was actually a pastor at one of my old churches who passed away from COVID after many of the congregants denied COVID and then wound up infecting him. So, yeah, it's pretty hard, or was pretty hard during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I can picture that there too. I guess it was more in the rural areas where I guess the deniability was a lot higher, to say the least, there too. But, and I guess normally I like asking this other question here related to COVID here too, because I like to see how different parts of the states, for instance, in our case, have been doing since they lifted the COVID restrictions. So, since you're pretty rural, I guess the nearest town to you, or city for that matter, I guess, I don't know how close you are to one of those cities or towns, but I guess how's it been doing? Has it been on the up and up since COVID?
Yeah, ever since COVID kind of died down some, it's been doing better. We got two main towns that are about 20-minute drive from where I am, which here isn't considered a long drive, but I know that may be considered long for other people. I'm not sure, not familiar, but yeah, well, it's actually a double-edged sword, or rather two sides of the same coin. On one hand, our towns are doing better. On another hand, everyone you run across, for the most part, looks gloomy and depressed. It's like the whole atmosphere is just dark. It's one reason I don't like to go out into town as much anymore. It's just depressing. It's the same vibrance isn't there anymore. You know, my closest town, Russellville, and that's public information, by the way. I don't mind if that's shared. Is the highest. They have a very vibrant Latino culture in the entire state. After COVID, all that started dying down. It's really sad. I really hate it.
Yeah, I see. I guess, have you been doing any shows recently? I guess the last couple of years with you, this group, I guess it was.
Oh, my bad. It may surprise you. Up until this point, we haven't actually did live performances, not because we don't want to, but because all of our band members are spread apart by multiple states. So it's really difficult to plan something like that. Were we to find the opportunity to do that, if all band members agreed, I would have to see how Garrett was feeling. Yeah, I think we would be down to do that in the future. But as of right now, we haven't been able to do that. We've just released albums, or I have released albums, and we're coming to release more releases. that sort of thing. Most of the publicity has been through label releases.
I see. But in terms of COVID, though, too, it's good to see you got pulled through, and it's good to see you are doing well there, mate. So keep up the good work, and hopefully your family's doing better too. So blessings to them as well.
Oh yeah, they're doing a lot better. You know, or I should say, they actually adopted 4 kids several years ago. A lot of my listeners or fans may be aware of this already, but yeah, those 4 new additions to our family, I consider them like blood siblings. They were pulled out of some very harsh homes. Most people may not be aware of this one major dark facet of this state is crime is very big here. The whole state might as well, I wouldn't say the whole state, but a large chunk of the state might as well be one big ghetto. It's not like it used to be. Whereas a lot of the injustice and inequality has died down, crime has risen to replace it. And it's not a safe place. I can't say too much because it might put me in danger, and my family. But what I will say is, if someone comes here, or even just the neighboring states, be very careful who you talk to. Be very careful who you trust. The main people who's going to be your friends are the farmers and the small families. But other than that, keep your chin up, pay close attention, be careful.
All right, sound advice right there too. So thanks, mate. All right, so I guess getting back into music wise, I guess if you want to talk about any of the gear you got, I guess what do you use to make the magic happen?
Well, in the past, I had used a PV Rotary XP 6-string guitar with 12-gauge strings. Maybe wondering how in the world I put 12-gauge strings on it. Well, where there's a will, there's a way, buddy, and I did it. And other than that, I also had my uncle's, the same uncle I mentioned. His guitar was passed on to me by his direct family. I was entrusted with it. I recorded a lot of my earlier music with that guitar. As far as drums, it's been a combination of programming my own, but also collaborating with other drum musicians to create a lot of my music. I believe, one of the earlier kind of releases was actually a collaboration between me and Eversoul from Rationum. I think that's how you pronounce his band. That was pretty interesting. As far as other equipment, the studio mic is actually what I used to record my vocals with. And M audio dual interface over here sitting on my computer. Can't move it to show you or it'll unplug the cord, but you can believe me when it's there. As far as that goes, I done forgot the type of bass. It's just a bass my cousin lent me, but it's a really, really nice bass. I usually tune everything to C standard for Goatscorge. Other than that, Garrett has his own setup. He's recording with his own stuff for the new Goatscorge album.
That's good to hear. And, I forgot to ask this earlier, I guess. Who's all involved with the Goatscorge project? Is it you? And I guess you're saying Garrett was his name?
Garrett Thomas. He is the newest permanent, as long as he'll stay here, addition to Goatscorge. He will now be playing the guitars, bass, drums, and doing the professional mixing and mastering, whereas I may do some other tweaks to the music along with lead vocals, some backing vocals. We also have a temporary collaboration with William PV, who will be helping us do some backing vocals on a couple of tracks. And his vocals are good. They're really good. I've heard them. So it should be something to look forward to.
Guess what? We're talking about Garrett, and I guess some of your guys. I guess, how did you meet him? Was it just luck of the draw on social media, or did you put a flyer out there?
I forgot who it originally was. that introduced us to each other, but we were actually introduced. It was out of the kindness of someone's heart. They thought we'd be a good team to make a band together. Someone apparently heard that he wanted to make a black metal band, and no one, even though he's great at making music, great is mixing and mastering, people would never give him a chance because of his disabilities. But he has, in the past, he has opened for POD and Living Sacrifice, to name a couple, in the 90s with some of his earlier bands. Now, today, if it turned out we did resonate with each other quite a bit, so I try to make it known that he's a really great musician, a really great studio musician. So yeah, that's the gist of that.
That's good to hear. And boy, opening up with POD and Living Sacrifice. Oh man, that must have been awesome. Actually, did you think Living Sacrifice is more older works, or are you okay with like? I don't know if they came up with any new material recently, but I guess they're recent works that were more deathcore sort of style music.
Let's see. I think the one album I always liked by them was called Ghost Thief. Am I right?
That was the most recent one, yeah. So yeah, that was
okay.
I think my favorite was always when they went. I always laugh too because they always said it was like the Christian version of Slayer, but it was actually their thrash album, which was their self-titled album. That was the very first one they released. That was 1990 too. Man, that flies too quick. So after that, they kind of messed around with it, but then it seemed like they eventually started selling more. I don't want to say deathcore, but it's definitely one of those ones that have like a lot of breakdowns. Maybe not a whole lot of solos, but I don't know. I guess. Do you dig some of the newer stuff, Living Sacrifices, or do you think the older stuff might have been a lot better? I know you mentioned Ghost Thief.
Yeah, Ghost Thief was the album that introduced me to them. See, I didn't learn about, or I should say, I knew about them, but I didn't really get into their music until that album dropped. This was probably I assume this was during my metalcore phase. So, but when I got a little older, I started looking into some of their more earlier albums. I remember specifically liking their debut release. I forget, the name eludes me. It's been a long time, but their debut release was a smacker. As far as what's better, these days I tend to lean more classic thrash and metal, so I would probably pick their older styles. That's not to say that their new styles aren't good or fun. I like them too. But when it comes to Living Sacrifice, I'm probably going to have to say 60% old school Living Sacrifice, 40% new school Living Sacrifice.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment there too. I'd say I'm the same way. Though it seems like along the same lines too. I think it would be similar like how most people would compare like the big four thrash, for instance. It's like, oh, they were so much better way back in the 80s. Probably more so Metallica these days. So I think most people went along back for the 80s, to be honest, since that was really an introduction to more of the heavier metals and started coming out there too. And it seemed like everyone was mostly happy. I don't know. Every part of the States was in a happy mood, to say the least. So I guess what's your opinion of like some of the thrash groups that are still around these days with Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, yeah, and even Megadeth?
I think Megadeth and Slayer still release pretty great music. With Metallica, I think my opinion is probably reflective of the majority. I like most of their stuff up to the Black Album. After that, it's just no. I'm sorry, Metallica. But overall, yeah, Metallica in their prime was great. Slayer and Megadeth, I still dig Slayer and Megadeth. I need to catch up on them more, their newer albums, but from what I have heard of their newer stuff, I still dig it quite a lot.
I think Slayer's trying to come out of retirement, but I'm hearing conflicting messages because I think Tom Araya suddenly announced that they wanted to come out of retirement. He didn't tell Kerry King anything, and Kerry King's trying to make his own album, From Hell I Rise. And now Facebook's like saying, oh, they're not going to do any shows or any touring or anything like that. And I'm hearing on the radio like, oh, they're going to be at this festival, this festival. And it's like, what gives? I'm trying to get the tails of this situation. I don't know. I guess, what do you think of Slayer reunites and does another tour?
If they do another tour, maybe I can finally see them live. But no, in all seriousness, I think it would be really great. I just wonder how their hiatus would affect the quality of their music, I guess. But it's not really the quality I worry about when bands start doing things again. It's the passion they have for the music that I worry whether it has diminished any or not. Because without the passion for the music, I don't care what anyone says, you can't make truly good music. That's just my opinion, though.
I see where you're coming from then there too. And I guess, have you done any shows like pre-COVID? I guess with any of the groups that you were a part of? You didn't do any live shows yet?
I unfortunately did not. The closest thing I've came to a live performance is when I used to do choir as a kid. Other than that, no, not yet. But only because we didn't have the opportunity to do so.
I see. Actually, my next guest was karaoke nights at the bar. So
I wouldn't mind that either. It sounds fun.
I don't know. I'm trying to picture you singing "Journey" with the "Don't Stop Believing." So
Corpse paint, bracers, everything, bro.
he's come prepared, so you know he's ready for some action. So I see. Yeah. For the next question right here, I guess in terms of creating a song, for instance, do you normally do the music first and then do the lyrics last, or vice versa?
I usually like to do the music first because hearing the music finished, right, or I should say recorded, it helps give me more of an idea of how I want the lyrics and vocals to go. So I sort of try to notice the energy of how the song sounds, right? So is it chaotic? Is it melodic? Is it this or that? Is it raw? Is it clean? Blah, blah, blah. And then I can sort of take from that and inspire my lyrics. About half of my music has improvised lyrics where I would just do vocals on the proper timing and just let the lyrics come out. Other times I do plan my lyrics out, but it's always after the music has been recorded.
Speaking of lyrics too, I guess do you pull passages from the Bible and put your own spin on it, or do you try to do it word for word from the Bible?
I rarely ever do it word for word. It really just depends on the message I'm trying to send out with each particular song. Most of the time, it's my own spin on things because I believe in individuality. I believe people should be able to express themselves as individuals. It's not merely me trying to preach the same exact dogma that's been copy and pasted throughout history. No offense to people who like that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, there is the sharing, or I should say, the expression of people's individual faith, people's individual both struggles and joys with their creator, between their creator and themselves. So a lot of people think they have to be just always happy lyrics or always just quote the scripture. And I have quoted scripture at times. But at the same time, it's not always sunshine and rainbows for people going through all of this in their relationship with God or their religion, whatever religion that may be, whatever. My point is, unless you're able to see the multifaceted sides of each individual in their faith, you will not be able to understand them as a person. So I try to be as authentic as possible.
Amen to that. I was gonna say, hopefully they're using the right kind of rainbows there too, because it seems like these days you have more of the LGBTQ using the rainbows a different symbolism, to say the least, there too. So I can say.
Oh yeah.
And actually, the reason I brought the whole thing up with the lyrics was one of a friend of mine, Bond of Iniquity, and I've actually collaborated with him. We got a new single coming out together, and his music, he calls it relevation metal, and he actually does do word for word from the Bible, depending on like what passage that he's drawing the inspiration from, to say the least, there too. So, and also list off a couple other ones. I think the only one that comes to mind right now is Ritual Servants, based out of South Carolina. There,
I know them.
you know Patrick?
Well, not Patrick specifically, but I know of his band Ritual Servant. I used to listen to him a lot several years ago. I just forgot to check them out recently, but I do like the music.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of Metallica, he actually did you hear his cover of Creeping Death?
I think I heard about it when it first came out, but I believe I haven't actually listened to it yet. But I'll have to do that now that you bring it to my attention again.
Yeah, I should listen to it. He changed it a little bit there too, but he still made it sound super badass and everything too. So I love those guys there too, and God bless them. So they're awesome guys to have on there too. So, all right. So in terms of lyrics, so this one, the next question here talks about challenges as well there too. So I guess outside of the obvious with the death threats and maybe even trying to find a venue, let alone get the band together, I guess what are sort of challenges do you face these days being a musician?
Well, where to even begin with this? Well, first of all, most of my music was recorded out of a bedroom that didn't even have walls at the time. And that's also where I slept and live my life for the longest time. Here, I am not quite as confined, although I'm still not a wealthy individual as far as the music itself goes, trying to get the bands out. People did not like me well, I say people did not like me. There was a lot of individuals who decided to cause me trouble during a lot of the earlier musical endeavors that I've had, including Goatscorge. This included musicians I looked up to in the scene, betraying me, running me down behind my back on Christian black metal forums. I won't name any names because I don't want to slander anyone. I've had that's when a lot of the threats started from both sides. Other struggles, definitely financial. I just had to scrape what I could find. I just happened to find an old Cubase interface and software, which is what a lot of my earlier stuff uses. Other equipment, thankfully, I managed to find that guitar, and I had a Marshall amp at the time, which I used for about half of the earlier stuff. Then I went to physical pedals combined with digital amps, which is what I used for a long time after that. Other struggles, misunderstanding between family members, judgment from other family members. I've been humiliated publicly in churches by different individuals. There was actually one instance, a traveling minister actually openly holding the microphone essentially told me what I was doing was evil and that I shouldn't be referring to a Frost-like Ashes shirt. Wearing that shirt is much less in a church, etc., etc. So yeah, it's been quite difficult, but here's the nice spin on all of that. The title, Ascension Through Flames, is essentially the symbolic embodiment of all that. Let's say all of that's the fire, all that bad stuff is the fire. Rising through those flames, and then the oppressors, or the demonic, being decimated by the same flames they tried to decimate me with, but not just me. I believe there's a lot of people just like me who don't get a voice, who are also going to rise from these flames, and I probably already have.
Jeez, man, that's a lot to take in there too. And it seems like multiple backstab wounds whenever you think about it in a metaphorical sense too. So, and I may be jumping on this a little too soon, but I guess what was it really that kept you going? You think maybe somehow you still felt your uncle was still here, kind of helping you along the way?
It was definitely my uncle. It was certain family members of mine. I don't want to publicize them too much just in case, but just the gentle encouragement here and there. But the main thing was my relationship with Christ. That's the main thing. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be alive right now. I'll just put it quite frankly that way. So that is the main, almost sole reason that I'm still here today.
That's good to hear. And normally when people like hear those kind of stories, I think they would say like that'd be enough to drive a normal person crazy. Or in the case of Batman: The Killing Joke, I don't know if you ever read that comic. It was almost like
I've seen the animation.
Yeah, it was almost like you were one bad day away from becoming the Joker in a certain sense. So the other thing too was I remember another friend I've interviewed out of Florida. He's in the rap and hip hop scene. He told me all these stories about how his sister was a little crazy, a little out there to say the least. It almost seemed like it was like schizophrenia or something. And he got it was the most craziest story ever too. So it's a lot of things you learn when taking in all the stories here for these interviews here too. But I do thank you for sharing that too, because I think talking about this sort of stuff, it helps make life a little bit easier. So would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that sentiment.
That's good. And I don't know what I guess first off, what social media are you on?
Let's see. Band-wise, I mostly use Facebook. Rarely do I use anything else simply because Twitter's too toxic, Reddit is too cringe, and so whatever. YouTube definitely is a major platform I use, usually to just share information of upcoming releases or sometimes for streaming upcoming releases for people to listen to without having to always buy them. Other than that, definitely Bandcamp. I used to use Spotify, but that kind of... Anyway, that's about it.
Just before I jump into this question here too, did you drop off Spotify because of the whole thing that CEO said, or did you drop Spotify a while back?
I honestly don't delve too much into politics as far as my individual self. So what the CEO says or doesn't say doesn't usually affect me. It's how useful is their product for me. Their product was not as useful when you're only making about 5 cents a year, and they're still asking you to pay about $150 every year on top of that. It's a little, it doesn't seem very worth it.
You ain't lying. Basically, the reason I brought that up was a lot of musicians I followed there too. They were saying like how they were dropping their Spotify premium because of what that CEO had said there too. So, and it seems everyone wants to go to Tidal and Bandcamp. I know that's what you're using. Do you use Tidal at all, or are you just strictly Bandcamp now?
This is actually my first time hearing about Tidal, believe it or not.
Yep. Yeah, learn something new every day. So that's all good. And I forgot to ask this too. On Facebook, are you part of our band group called Band Together?
I don't know if I am or not. I've been invited to so many groups, about 2 or 3 a day, and I've lost track of most of them, but it's possible in the infinite ocean of groups that I've been a part of on Facebook. But the name actually does sound familiar. I'll have to go check it out and make sure. If I'm not already, I'll be sure to join.
I do encourage you to join. It's good to have you on there and try to share your music there too. So I'll leave it up to you there. So, but it's a nice group that Christina and Greg have put together. That's where all the indie musicians, including the Ritual Servant and Bond of Iniquity that I mentioned earlier, that's where they're on right there. So they share the music and interact with all these other musicians, helps with building collabs, and then hopefully getting more of those streams to help you out. Maybe hopefully pay for the gas at some point, but at that point, I seriously doubt it. So, but I guess leading to this question right here too. So, given what you've been kind of going through, I guess, what advice would you give to other musicians, whether on social media or in your neck of the woods?
Let your suffering be motivation, not chains. Convert that suffering, or rather, see what you can learn from that suffering. See what wisdom you can gain from it. We're all here to learn. We're here put on this earth to teach, to save, and to learn. That stage of suffering is learning. No matter what situation you're in, no matter if you think, well, my suffering isn't as great as somebody else's, so why am I even, whatever. No, everyone's suffering is equally valid, no matter what background you come from. So I would say the main thing, what I just said, also, above all else, surrender everything to God. That includes 100% humility, 100% transparency, and 100% trust. If you can do these three things between you and God, you and Christ, you will succeed no matter how long it takes, either in this life or the next.
That's good to hear. And I did forget to mention another artist, Messianic. It's Alfred Garza. He's out of the Texas area. And
I've heard of that.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. And interviewed him recently. So I got it coming up on Spotify and on YouTube, so you can check out his story a little bit more there too. Very awesome dude. So
I'll check it out.
All right. So let's see. We talked about that. I think we reached the questions here pretty good. So let's go ahead and jump to the phone ones. Ready, Servant?
Sure.
All right. So for the first one right here, I guess, what would you consider as your favorite food?
It's really hard to say. This may sound typical of me, but I really like curry. I don't have it much, but I really like curry. Other than that, just homemade Southern food. That's what I grew up with. So, and sushi. I didn't used to like it, but I love me some sushi now. Believe it or not.
It's that good old Southern hospitality. Yeah. And actually, curry is actually one that hasn't come up too recently much in my interviews. Maybe a couple times like here or there, but most people would either say some sort of Italian cuisine, pizza. Let's see. Usually some sort of meats. And sometimes they'll get broad at the topics whenever they say like Mexican and Italian, like I mentioned earlier. So sometimes it's like, you got to be more specific. And I was actually curious. Normally when you said that, I was thinking like, oh, here comes the pizza. Because most people would always say something with pizza. It's always something with pizza. So
I actually didn't like pizza until I was about 6 years old, weirdly enough.
Seriously? Oh, man.
I was a weirdo growing up.
I'd say, hey, at least you're honest, too. But I remember getting Domino's. And now, unfortunately, Domino's has kind of lost its touch. So I'm actually kind of sad about that. Same with pizza, too. So
I agree.
I'd say my go-to seems to, and I know this is national chain, but it's Pasquale's in my neck of the woods. And there's also Caliente would be like a close second. So.
Over here, I'd say my favorite is Sbarro's.
Isn't that the gas station? Or?
It's a real Italian pizza chain. I believe it started in New York City, then it worked its way down here. I think it's mostly an East Coast thing.
I'm trying to remember. I swear that name sounded familiar. Sbarro? How do you spell it?
I don't know. I don't know how to speak Italian. but I'll try to find it later after the interview and I'll DM it to you. But yeah, it's really good stuff. Best pizza I ever ate in my life. They usually sell it in strip malls, but sometimes you can find it in other places too.
All right, sounds good. Fair enough. All right. For the next fun questions, I guess, what would you consider is your favorite movie?
Let's see. That's a hard one. I have a lot of favorite movies. Actually, I can't name a number one favorite movie, but I can name a favorite movie. You brought up the Killing Joke comic earlier. When Mark Hamill first announced that the only way he would come back as the voice of Joker would be if they made a Killing Joke animation, and then they announced it a couple years later, or maybe less. I was like, I got to see this thing, and I would say that's definitely one of my favorites. The animation of the Killing Joke. I watched it almost when it first came out. It's very nostalgic too. It's had the same voice actors and stuff from the old '90s animations and all this cool stuff. I hate what happened to the voice actor of Batman from the animated series, though. Rest his soul. Other favorite movies. I've always been a big Star Wars fan of the original 6. Sorry, Disney. I don't like your stuff. But anyways, Indiana Jones, a lot of classic stuff like Die Hard and different things like that. Terminator. I love stuff like that.
This is it, Die Hard. I was like, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, yeah, don't worry about the whole thing with Star Wars, too. Trust me. I didn't really care too much for the sequels, and I would say I didn't mind The Mandalorian. I mean, people seem to really judge a book by its cover a little too soon these days, so I don't know.
No,
I guess.
I heard The Mandalorian was supposed to be pretty good, so I might give it a chance. We'll see.
Seemed like the first 2 seasons were pretty good, and I think all of a sudden it just like fell apart because I think it was Gina Carano. I think that was the actress's name. She got kicked off for some reason. I forget what the story about that was, and then that seemed to be like its downfall afterwards, saying that it was like too woke or whatever terminology they used.
Seems like everybody's always at each other's throats for some reason or another.
You ain't lying. Sadly, to say at least there too. And I was trying to think of some of the other movies you had just mentioned there too. And Indiana Jones. Yeah, I do remember the 3. I actually remember seeing more of The Last Crusade. I think that was more of my favorite.
That was one of my favorites as well. That and Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, were my 2 favorites.
I did think. I thought Raiders of the Lost Ark. I thought it was a little bit more creepy whenever they open up the Septuagint, or however you pronounce it. And I thought it was a little bit more graphic whenever their faces are melting and they all start exploding, and I guess some sort of spirit shoots through all the Nazis and does all that. So I thought it was a bit more graphic, to say the least, there too. So, but still,
it certainly was. It certainly was. You know, PG used to. They didn't used to have the PG-13 rating back then, so PG could be some, kid family friendly show, or it could be an absolute horror gore fest. So.
I mean, I tend to wonder what the audience thought when Disney did The Lion King way back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Such a movie, but still great nonetheless. So, all right. Good choices nonetheless. For the next question right here, first off, do you drink any alcohol?
I've tried drinks, but as you know, with the major depressive disorder, it's not really a good idea because it's a downer, it's a depressive, right? I'm fine if people want to drink. That's up to them. Me individually, if I had to say whether I still drink, I would say no. Have I drank in the past? Yes, out of curiosity, but it's never been a habit. For the same reason I already stated. But yeah, I assume you were leading on to something with that question.
I always like to check to make sure there first, because I have interviewed people who were alcoholics way back in the day, and they've reformed their life. I was trying to figure out the terminology there, but they've done a good job of getting out of the alcohol, to say at least or two. And I wasn't sure. It was a good thing you brought up about your major depressive disorder, because I didn't know if that played a factor into it too. So thanks for sharing that. But it was also leading to like, what is your favorite non-alcoholic drink in this case?
Non-alcoholic drink. Is that even possible to choose just one? I
mean, people just go straight water or soda. So, I mean, you can't go wrong.
I honestly are probably going to throw you a curveball here. I like grape and apple cider as far as non-alcoholic drinks. I can actually tell you a favorite alcoholic drink, even though I don't drink it anymore, what I preferred back in the day. But I have to look at my phone real quick. It was actually a type of tequila.
Where is it? One of the more national brand sort of ones?
I think it was a Mexican brand, actually.
Let's say me and my dad, we never really understood people who did drink tequila. I tried a couple times. It was seemed a little hard, to be honest. It was like a hard taste.
It's not something I would recommend to anybody with a low tolerance or even medium tolerance to alcohol. I have a high tolerance to pretty much everything, but I don't drink anymore, as I've stated. It was called Don Julio Tequila Blanca. That would have to be my favorite from back in the day, I would say. And Sanguine Red Wine.
Well, I was almost going to say Blood of Christ, but I didn't want to go that far, to be honest. So.
Well, I mean, why not bring glory to them in every conversation, right? But I get what you're saying, though. Transubstantiation, all that good stuff. But yeah, I'd say that as far as drinks goes, that's pretty much it. Oh, non-alcoholic strawberry Fanta. I love that stuff.
Strawberry Fanta.
Mm-hmm. Ice cold.
Ice cold, baby. It's like, actually, no, I was going to say iced tea, motherfucker, or something like that. Hey. And for the last fun questions here, too, I guess, what would you consider as currently your favorite song or a song you've been listening to a good bit recently?
Song I've been listening to a good bit. Chess with the Abyss by Dimmu Borgir is one major song I've listened to a lot lately. Off the top of my head, this is going to sound very wrong, but I like a lot of the newer Archgoat music for the music, not the lyrics. The way I see it is, if I can go against their narrative of them trying to make music to convert Christians to Satanism, what would happen if I took inspiration from their music to then inspire Goatscorge?
Hence the idea. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, we did a complete 180. That sort of thing.
Exactly.
I see. I know you talked about black metal a good bit, but actually, when I was on my recent trip in Scotland and England, during one of our bus rides, I actually turned on Behemoth. It was actually the Demigod album. And just remember when the title song came on, I was like, damn, I hadn't listened to this song in forever, but it's still heavy as hell. So, still kicking some ass out there, too. So, you got to respect Behemoth for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've only heard some of Behemoth's earlier stuff, like not even that much, but I've heard enough to know that they're talented musicians, and I do appreciate their music. I wouldn't say I like all their songs, but I think they're talented. So kudos to them for that.
That's for sure. And Nergal, he's an interesting guy. I like that guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've heard some interesting stuff about him as well.
That's for sure. All right. So, Servant, we are down to one more question. We've actually almost talked for just about an hour, but I guess before we jump into it, did you have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
How did you start with this podcast? Actually, I'm curious.
No. And people have asked this question here too, but the idea of podcasting at least started like pre-COVID. Excuse me. And I've always kind of wrestled with like, first off, what was the podcast too? Because they made it sound like it was like something you were describing, like how to do this and that. And other ones I've seen just seem like be like a normal conversation. It'd be like, oh, well, that's cool. And I do have to confess, I'm pretty introverted, to say the least, too. I did a stint in sales, and I totally sucked at it, to say the least. So
I am not a public speaker at all. I understand.
Yeah. So there was that. So for one thing, it was meant to kind of break my introversy, which I just like to throw that term out there, but it was to break down that sort of barrier. And the other one, too, since I was really big into music, since mostly metal and rock, but I tend to, since all music matters in that too, you branch out to people in like rap, R&B, and that other genres too. So it was really just to get a chance to talk with people and start off one day, just chatted with a friend who's a drummer now in Nashville. And after that, I just reached out to various musicians on like YouTube, Instagram, and like maybe just did like one instrument. And eventually when I did join band together, I got into like the indie community and all that too. So it started expanding to like bands or maybe just solo projects where, in this case, the individual is like doing all the instruments and then mixing and mastering and everything there too. So, and the rest is history.
That's really awesome to hear. Looks like you got a pretty vibrant history there, especially in the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah, I try. And normally during the workforce, I didn't have any like some of the same problems you did, but it was kind of hard finding what was really calling me here too. So I'm trying to make it a full-time position with podcasting, but it's not as easy as it looks. No, none of us can be like Joe Rogan at the moment.
Oh yeah, I totally understand that. I would have to reply and say to that, what your struggles during, all of that, make your podcast stuff. Sure, it may not have took the exact reflective form of my struggles, but it's still equally valid. So I would say, don't be too hard on yourself about that, and don't compare yourself to others. That's just my advice.
I like to be brutalized. It helps my spirit. So
I understand. That makes sense.
Actually, I was quoting Mudvayne's drummer Mac McDonough because he said that line when it was actually way back in the day when they were doing the music video for Dick, and he was doing the drum portion, I guess, for that song. I guess they had him do it like X number of times, and by then he was just dead. I mean, he just fell down on the floor. He's like, I'm done. Fuck me, that sort of thing. Gotta love that guy, though, too. He's an awesome dude. Be nice to chat with him one of these days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. I guess, did you have anything else, or okay, we jump into the last question?
We can go ahead and jump into the last question. Yeah, that's fine. We can do that. Just wanted to make sure I didn't have anything stuck in my subconscious back here that I wanted to ask.
Somebody tells me he's going to remember as soon as we get off the interview. He'll be like, oh no, I had to ask him that question. All right, but you're all good there too. But here's how it goes. So given what COVID has done and even what you've gone through in your personal life there too. So it looks like you've been kind of stuck in the darkness for a good bit, but it looks like you're on a nice trend going up here hill too, to say the least. So, but for those musicians and people who perhaps been impacted by COVID or anything else that came like pre-COVID or after, whatever, for that matter, I guess what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we try to move forward in the post-COVID world?
The only way we get past this is if we, one, don't give up, which I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. But we have to stick together. We have to stop dividing each other. We have to stop being at each other's throats. We have to stop saying, oh, this or that belief is better or more valid than another, even outside of our own religion, but while still holding true to our beliefs and telling the truth, etc. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying be more respectful of others. That being said, unity is the only thing that's going to save us, both as a church and as a species. Whether you're a Christian or not, or religious or not, or whatever, what have you, if you're a musician and you're facing tough times from the secret underbelly of the music world, such as backstabbing people you may look up to. I know I'm not the only one who's experienced that. Don't lose hope. Because if you lose hope in face of all that, they win. Don't let them win. But at the same time, don't seek revenge. Revenge is futile. It leads to just a worse outcome. Instead, let your success be what opens the eyes of your enemies. And that's all I'll say about that.
Spoken like a true prodigy. Yeah.
I try.
Close out with that line. That's right, yeah. A very, very good advice there too. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that there, mate. All right. So, Servant, we reached the end of my podcast right here. We talked a little bit over an hour right now. I guess before we close, do you got any shout outs and any final words you want to say before we close out?
Yeah. Garrett Thomas, newest band member. You're a badass. Thank you. I know people say a lot of assumptive things about you, saying, oh, you're not a good enough mixer, or you're not a good enough musician. Oh, there's no way you could have opened up for those bands back in the day, even though you've shown me you have. I hope to always be a good friend to you. Other than that, friend Derek, recently been talking to him some more again. Me and him actually are kind of like best friends. We help each other when it comes to music and stuff. So yeah, definitely those two. Oh, one more. Dwayne Keith, the Vision of God Records, has helped me a lot, as well as the label head Hans from Snowstorm Productions over there in Europe. Nordic Andreas from Nordic Mission has also helped me a lot. So thanks to all of you.
I guess also thank God for your friend introducing you to Garrett as well. So
absolutely.
Hold it all up there, mate. And I know you mentioned earlier about the streaming and social media you've been on. I guess just for the audience sake, can you just list what you're on again so they can check out your music and show your support to you?
I'm on Bandcamp and YouTube. If you go to my Facebook pages, respectively, you can actually find links to all of my socials for each specific band and project on each specific page. They'll be in the description, or excuse me, the bio of the page.
Yeah, description say for YouTube. That's how it goes. But you're all good there, mate. So, all right. So everyone, my guest today was Servant, hailing from down south right there. He's part of the Christian black metal group Goatscorge. He's part of the group with Garrett and Derek, and also thank God for the, what'd you say Dutch studio was over in Europe there?
Snowstorm Productions.
Snowstorm Productions. All right. So go hit him up on the socials. Go support this guy right here. This guy has been through a lot, but he's come out bigger and stronger here too. So God bless this guy, and good luck on your journey there, mate. So, Servant, I want to wish you all the best going there forward there, mate. So you stay safe because it's a crazy world out there. Rock on, and God bless you, mate. Stay tuned, y'all.